I have Dr. Sean in the house. Yes, I love it. So we're going to talk today about detoxification, talk about the fundamentals. Is it possible for us to feel worse, for some people to feel worse before they feel better? So Dr. Sean, can you just briefly talk about what exactly is happening during the detoxification phase that some of us, and I think it's a small percentage of people, will experience while they're taking the fundamentals?
We see that frequently, but we don't see it frequently. We see it consistently, meaning there's a small percentage of people that whenever you change anything, whether you add a new supplement, whether you change them from a terrible diet to a good diet, or whenever you change something, the gastrointestinal tract, and therefore the whole entire body, can sometimes act a little bit weird. We see it in our research trials. We see it when people start something new. And really what it is, people will sometimes call it, they'll call it a detox reaction. They'll call it a healing crisis. It really is just the body adapting to a new state. And the sort of typical adaptation is you take somebody from low nutrients, you take them to higher nutrients, they start feeling better. But there's a small percentage of people, and it might be 5% of people, it might be 10% of people, that will sometimes respond oppositely. So instead of feeling better, they might actually feel worse for a short period of time as their body is adjusting. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. Sometimes you'll experience constipation. Sometimes you'll experience diarrhea. Sometimes you'll experience a little bit of achiness. And sometimes we can very specifically say why it's happening. So for example, if you start killing off a bunch of your bad bacteria and they release inflammatory compounds into your system, you might feel achy and almost like you have the flu for a couple of days as your body works through that inflammation. A lot of times it's just these non-specific, low-grade headache or, a little bit of fatigue or something. But the good news is if you experience it, you will come out the other side a week or 2 or 3 after your body goes through that adjustment, feeling amazing, right? And we see it all the time in our research trials.
So would you recommend for people to cut the dose in half or push through? And I guess that's kind of a personal decision, right?
It's very much a personal decision. We tell people, drink more water, be physically active if you can, make sure you're getting your rest because your body's actually doing a lot of work to go through this adjustment phase. And so, the choice is going to be, are the symptoms so much that you need to back off? If you need to back off, what we typically recommend is whatever you're taking, try to cut it back to half of whatever you're doing. And that allows your body to still go through the adjustment, the rebalancing process, but not to such a degree where you're getting those symptoms. So you'll still go through it. It might take a little bit longer for you to achieve that new state of balance. Or if it's not too bad, if you can just push through with the knowledge that, okay, my body's adjusting, I'm going to come through this in 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, something like that. That makes it a little bit easier to sort of deal with that. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
Right. So with the fundamentals, you would say a half a scoop, and then would you also say one focus and one sink?
Yeah, that's a perfect way to do it. So
okay.
Yeah, so with fundamentals, the recommended dosage is 1 scoop of Mentabiotics, 2 capsules of Mentafocus, 2 capsules of Mentasync. So if you start getting a little bit of that sort of detox reaction, right? That adjustment reaction, cut it back to half a scoop, 1 capsule, and go like that for 3 or 4 days, and then go up to the normal dosing.
If we have someone that comes to us, they want to start the fundamentals, and they're in pretty poor health to begin with. They have a lot of stress in their life. They have a lot of digestive issues, a lot of inflammation. Would you out of the gates start slow, like start with half a dose, or just go right in and then?
Yeah, that's a good question. You never can predict who is going to be the person that feels amazing on day one or feels kind of sluggish on day one. Like even when we do our measurements in our clinical trials, right? We do all our baseline measurements based on those baseline measurements. We can't predict who's going to be the person who immediately thrives, who's the person who has a little bit one of these setbacks, or very often what we see is in the first week, somebody doesn't feel anything at all. And then week 2, maybe they don't feel anything at all. And then week 3, all of a sudden, boom, something has clicked, something has rebalanced in their bodies. We still don't have a good understanding for that level of individual variation. But what we do know is that by week 4, almost everybody is feeling better. By week 6, then it gets to be 90%. Then at week 8, it gets to be 95%. Once people follow this program through all that adjustment period, all that rebalancing, virtually 100% of people are feeling better in the ways that we can actually quantify.
That is awesome. So that you've actually studied this and watched it and.
Yeah, and it's actually, this is a little sort of, behind the curtains of how we do this kind of research. We very often don't even take measurements on people for the first couple of weeks because of that adjustment. We know some people are adjusting well, some people are adjusting poorly, some people haven't adjusted at all. And that creates a lot of noise in the system, so to speak, when we're collecting our data. And so those first couple of weeks, most researchers just treat those as adjustment weeks until we get out to starting to see those balance points.
So now my daughter experienced a lot of emotional detoxing. And I remember meeting you in New York and you saying, get some mood into her. And so that helped tremendously. That was huge. But can you explain that? Because that was really mind-blowing to me.
Let's sort of step back. A big piece of the adjustment that we're seeing in people is that we're starting to grow a population of good bacteria in the gut, and we're starting to kill off a population of bad bacteria. So when those good guys start growing, they're going to produce more feel-good, happy chemicals, more serotonin so you're happy, or more dopamine so you're motivated, more GABA so you can relax, etc. When the bad guys die off, they're going to be releasing these inflammatory compounds that can lead someone to feel achy, like sore, and like maybe a little bit in pain. That can lead some people to feel sluggish. It can lead some people to have these mood swings. So like you might feel sad, you might feel like crying. Again, it's going to be a very individualized situation.
What about the reboot? So again, you just said that you can't really predetermine how somebody's going to do either way. They may seem really healthy, but you just never know. So with the reboot, do you always recommend that people start right out and do the reboot no matter what?
Not always.
Choice, but go ahead.
Yeah, the reboot we give for free on those first orders of fundamentals as a way to give people a quick start into that readjustment program, or into those readjustment phases. But the same things that we're talking about here apply. Now you're going through this rapid readjustment over 3 days, and that can lead some people to feel euphoric, and it can lead other people to go, ooh, I feel kind of gross because of the things that might be changing. So, and again, we can't predict that, but the reboot is really designed to be sort of just a 3-day concentrated rebalancing of all these things that we're talking about, and get you off onto a good step when you start the rebuilding process with fundamentals. But there's no reason to say like you have to do the reboot or that you should avoid the reboot. There really is no hard and fast rule, so to speak. Love to know if anyone ever experiences feeling drugged or drunk to the point of almost passing out. I haven't heard that one. One of the things that is interesting when neurotransmitter production starts to rebalance in people, depending on which set of neurotransmitters start to be produced first, so to speak. Let's say you're starting to produce more dopamine. Those are the people who feel euphoric at the very beginning, right? Those are the people that we hear this all the time. They've been in a 3-day reboot, or they're on the first 3 days of their fundamentals, and they feel amazing. They'll just have so much energy. That's indicative of them starting to produce dopamine before they're producing the other round of neurotransmitters. Other people might start producing a lot more GABA before they start producing the other neurotransmitters. And those people are going to feel really relaxed, right? They might even feel a little bit sleepy at times because their body is doing this. And so what happens as you keep going through the program is that euphoria comes down to normal levels of energy and resilience. That sleepiness comes down to normal levels of relaxation and calmness. That rebalancing. I talked to someone this morning and they said, you know what? I'm getting a little bit of gas when I started on the fundamentals, and I don't really like that. And I said, well, what you're experiencing is that the bacteria that are starting to grow first are actually gas producers, which has a lot of beneficial effects in the body and the mind. What's going to catch up in a couple of days is the production of these bacteria that are gas users. And so again, it's just that a couple of days little lag in terms of what your microbiome metabolism is doing.
Pretty much within like a 10-day, you'll start to not feel a detoxification. And then within 30 days, things will start to really Really
Yeah, and
change.
that's one of the reasons that I really, really encourage people to say, look, I've been doing this for a good long time. And we've done it in
Mhm.
research settings. We've done it in just like public free living settings. And if you will just go through that week or those 2 weeks, virtually everybody by 4 weeks, that's why we say to people, look, give it a month. Please give it a month. You're going to have gone through that adjustment phase in a month and you are going to feel better. I mean, I can say that with utmost confidence. It's almost 100% of the people. I wish I could say it's 100%, but nothing's 100% ever with anything, so, but it's a very, very high percentage.
And then one last question is about the digestion. So I have someone here that's saying she has no energy, bloating, and cramping.
Yeah, well,
How does that eventually start to balance out for somebody that maybe started because of digestion?
Let me go back to this example, right? This isn't something, these adjustments that we're talking about aren't something that are unique to supplements. They might occur at a little bit higher level with supplements because supplements, if they're formulated the right way, are such a concentrated source of nutrition. When you change that, when you take somebody from a low source of nutrition to a high source of nutrition, that's a lot of stuff going into the gut that the gut isn't accustomed to. So sometimes people can get bloating, sometimes they can get cramping, sometimes they can get the opposite of that, which would be diarrhea, just because the gut as a tissue is just adjusting to this new state of its environment, right? So that could be a piece of it. We see that with dietary changes. We take somebody from the standard American diet, we put them on a Mediterranean diet. Same thing can happen for a couple of days. Again, if you just trust in the process, it will adjust and you're going to feel better on the other side. I'm not sure if that answered the question or not.
I mean, the whole thing is you got to give it time. Body took so long. And I don't know if this is true, but I've heard for every year that you're kind of out of balance, it takes at least 30 days. Is that accurate? I mean, I don't know where I heard that from, but I hear it often.
Yeah,
Do you think that's kind of true? I mean,
it's true in certain senses, right? So what we end up seeing is that if you're really out of balance, it might take a longer period of time for you to get into balance, right? Because there's more damage to fix. There's more things to rebalance. You could logically think, okay, someone really out of balance is going to take longer time to get into balance. Sometimes, though, what we see is that somebody who is really out of balance, even a little bit of rebalancing, they'll be able to sense and they'll go, oh my gosh, I feel better. And that we love to see that because what it does is it encourages that person psychologically to say, ooh, I'm seeing benefits. Let's keep going with this regimen. And then they get more into balance and more into balance and more into balance. And that's what people hear me say this all the time. I love to see people get better quickly because they're only getting a little bit better. If they continue with that, they get more better and more better and more better and more better. And it just continues. It creates this beautiful, what I call a virtuous cycle where better gets more better, gets more better, gets more better. And pretty soon people get out a month or 2 or 3 and they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe how bad I was back there. I don't ever want to go back there, but it's part of that process.
Right. I know. I love it. And I think that's the norm. But there are those few, the small percentage that it takes a little bit longer. So one more thing here. Hot flashes have returned since doing this.
Yeah, so that's another one that can happen. Here's a metaphor for you, right? Is that it's like peeling an onion. Coming from the outside of this onion, that better and better and better sometimes have layers of worse along in there. If I were to, and I've drawn this chart a million times across my career, if I had a whiteboard, I should put a whiteboard right back there so I could actually draw this sometime. You'll draw people and you'll say, look, you've gotten better, and then you hit this plateau. That plateau is the new layer. You might feel worse during that plateau, and then you feel better. And then another plateau, and then another better, and then another plateau. So like people are always going sort of up and to the right. If you think of it that way, you're on this trajectory of always getting better, but you might have a few of these little dips and valleys. And in our long-term trials, we absolutely see that. And what we think is happening is that in the early phases, you might have rebalanced the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit. And once you get through that layer, now your body gets to the next layer of harder stuff, and then harder stuff, and then harder stuff. So sometimes those early things that you have solved might come back in a little bit different way, and then it gets better. And then something else comes back, and then it gets better, and then something else. And so that's what I mean by more better and more better. It's not that you're always getting happier and happier and happier. It's that you might be less stressed, and then you're more resilient, and then you're more creative, and then you're more energetic. Like those are all different ways of getting better in sort of more different ways.
So is there something like, if someone's following a cleaner diet, would that help them? I mean, it makes sense to me that it would help them move along faster.
The more of these techniques that we recommend to people, the more you're eating less processed foods and less sugar, the better results you're going to have. The more that you're eating, high fiber fruits and vegetables, the better it's going to be for you. The more you're getting good sleep, the more you're physically active, the more you're doing your mindfulness training, like all of that. But I say that within the context of, I don't want people to think that they have to be doing a perfect lifestyle regimen in order for these products to work, because a lot of times these products can be the first piece of the puzzle to help somebody feel good enough so that they can get a good night's sleep, or feel good enough so that their appetite changes and they feel more like having a salad than a Big Mac. It's all little pieces of the puzzle. We have all these tools that we can use, and sometimes the supplements are going to be better, and sometimes these lifestyle approaches are going to be better.
Right. I love it. And then when you feel better, you make better choices. That's the bottom
Totally.
line.
Yeah. Another thing we see in our trials, that people just almost subconsciously start making better choices after they've used the supplements for a little period of time, because now they feel better. And if you feel better, you're making better choices about the whole rest of your life.
This is awesome. So good. And I know there's more questions, but I don't want to take a whole lot of your time. So I think just to sum it up, you got to give it time, right? You may be experiencing some things that aren't pleasant, but that's the healing crisis, as you call it, right?
Yeah.
More time. And
it's sort of important for people to realize that, like, if they want to feel better, if they legitimately want to feel and perform better, they have to trust in the process, right? You have to, like, we're not just making this stuff up, right? We've done really good research, and other laboratories have done really good research to be able to show if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to be better on the other side of that. And there might be a little bit of that bumpy road to get from point A to point B, but boy, point B is a heck of a lot better than staying at point A.
That's for sure. This is great. All right, Dr. Sean, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is a process, right? And just stick with it, because you'll get to the other side. And that's what we all want.
Exactly.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.